Welcome to another episode of the Bark Brigade podcast by Doggozila Magazine. Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to picture a scenario that is, well, it's probably intensely familiar to you.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Right. So you've had an absolutely catastrophic day. We're talking a flat tire in the rain, you spilled coffee all over your laptop, just a real everything goes wrong kind of day.
We have all been there.
Exactly. And you finally make it home, you just collapse onto the couch, and you start crying. You're completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And within seconds, you hear that familiar click-clack of paws on the hardwood floor. Your dog rushes over, forces their snoot right under your hands, nudges you, and just starts frantically licking the tears off your face.
It's a classic image.
It is. And in that specific moment, it feels like pure, unfiltered magic. It feels like this animal just possesses this soul-deep understanding of your sorrow, right?
It really does feel that way.
But the question that is driving our entire deep dive today is this. Is it actually magic, or is it a highly calibrated evolutionary biology at work? And even more importantly, what happens to that biological magic when a total stranger is the one sitting on your couch crying?
Well, it totally flips the script. And honestly, it is thrilling to dive into the mechanics of this with you today.
I am so ready.
Because when we strip away that romanticized Disney version of our pets, what we find underneath is actually so much more impressive.
More impressive than magic.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
We're talking about tens of thousands of years of sheer evolutionary pressure. You know, dogs are not just these cute companions we keep around the house. They are highly tuned emotional geniuses.
Wow. Emotional geniuses.
Yes. They have co-evolved alongside humanity for roughly 30,000 years.
That is a staggering amount of time.
Right. That is 30 millennia where a wolf's descendants' literal survival, I mean, their access to the warmth of the fire and the scraps of the hunt, it depended entirely on their ability to read our deepest feelings.
So they had to read our shifting moods and our unpredictable intentions just to survive.
Exactly. It was a matter of life or death.
30,000 years. That's like a staggeringly long internship in studying human behavior.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. If you're an early dog and you can't figure out if the hairless ape holding a spear is angry or happy,
You're not going to last very long.
right, you have to get remarkably good at reading the room. But to really grasp this canine superpower we see today, we can't just look at what a dog does.
No, we have to look much deeper.
We have to look at the invisible data they are constantly absorbing. Because before a dog can even begin to process a human emotion in its brain, it has to gather the raw environmental data.
Precisely. And humans are incredibly noisy broadcasters of data.
Even when we're quiet.
Oof, especially them. Even when we're sitting perfectly still and totally silent, the human body is, at its core, a sprawling, reactive chemical factory.
A chemical factory. I like that.
Yeah, and when we experience intense emotional shifts, like when panic sets in, or deep stress, or just profound sadness, that factory goes into immediate overdrive.
Okay, so what exactly is happening in the factory?
Well, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and we begin to release very specific chemical markers, primarily through our sweat.
Like stress sweat.
Exactly. We are talking about heavy-hitting stress hormones, mainly cortisol and adrenaline.
So we're essentially leaking our emotions into the air around us.
We are broadcasting them loud and clear. And what's fascinating here is the sheer hardware advantage the canine olfactory system has over ours.
Oh, the hardware difference is wild.
It really is. A human has roughly 6 million olfactory receptors. But a dog can have upwards of 300 million.
300 million. Wait, that's a completely different reality.
It is a different reality. And furthermore, the part of a dog's brain dedicated to analyzing those smells is proportionally 40 times larger than ours.
40 times. Wow.
Yeah. So when a human is stressed, they emit this chemical signature that is completely imperceptible to you or me. We just smell a person.
Right, we just smell Gary from accounting.
Exactly. But to a dog, that sudden spike in cortisol and adrenaline is like a blinding neon sign flashing in a pitch-black room.
I have to say, a neon sign made of stress sweat is a deeply visceral image.
It paints a picture, doesn't it?
It sounds a bit gross to us, but biologically it's just a brilliant survival mechanism. It's like they have a literal chemical lie detector installed right in their snout.
That is exactly what it is.
But I do have to push back a little here.
Sure, go ahead.
Because humans, we wear deodorant, right? We wear heavy perfumes, we cook foods with intense odors like garlic and onions. Can a dog really pick out the scent of cortisol underneath all of that environmental noise?
They absolutely can, and the reason lies in how their nose fundamentally operates. It's not like ours.
How so?
When a dog breathes in, a tiny fold of tissue just inside their nostril actually separates the air into two distinct paths.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, one path is just for respiration, just breathing air into the lungs.
Yeah.
But the other path goes directly to the olfactory recess, which is a highly specialized area purely for analyzing odors.
Hmm.
So they aren't just smelling a blend of everything in a room like a soup. They're literally sorting the molecules.
So they separate the garlic from the fear.
Precisely. The heavy colognes or the smell of dinner might be present, but the chemical structure of fear sweat is highly distinct, and it cuts right through the noise because their brains are evolutionarily hardwired to prioritize it.
Because it's a warning.
Exactly. It's a matter of basic survival signaling.
Man, that completely recontextualizes how I see dogs sniffing around guests when they come over.
It changes everything.
And this brings me to a landmark piece of research from 2025 out of the University of Vienna that honestly completely upended my understanding of this.
Oh, the Vienna study is incredible.
They wanted to figure out exactly what these chemosignals, these stress smells, do to a dog, isolating the smell from literally everything else.
Yes. The methodology of that Vienna study is what makes it a massive leap forward in the science.
Because normally it's hard to test, right?
Oh, incredibly hard. In behavioral science, dogs are notoriously difficult to test for just one single variable because they are constantly looking at us. They're reading our body language. They're listening to our breathing.
They're cheating the tests.
Basically, yes. So the researchers had to completely isolate the scent. They entirely shielded the humans.
Like behind a screen?
Yes. The dogs were placed in a room where they could not see the people, they could not hear them, they could not pick up on a single visual or auditory cue. They were only exposed to specialized scent pads.
And from what I read in the source material for this deep dive, the way they collected that sweat was wild.
It was very creative.
Yeah, they essentially had people wear absorbent pads in their armpits while watching terrifying horror movies.
Right, to collect genuine, authentic fear sweat.
And then on a different day, they had them watch calm, neutral nature documentaries to collect neutral sweat.
That's the only way to get pure, unadulterated chemosignals. You need the genuine physiological reaction of terror. You can't fake it.
So they take these scent pads, they place them in the testing room, and they just observe the dogs.
Exactly.
So the dogs have absolutely zero context. No crying human, no scary noises, just the isolated, pure scent of human fear wafting from a piece of cotton on the floor.
And the physical reaction of the dogs to that cotton pad is just staggering.
It really is. The dogs that were exposed to the fear sweat completely changed their body language.
Honestly. They immediately lowered their tails. They started moving much more cautiously, kind of hugging the perimeter of the room.
But like they were suddenly scared.
Yes, and they instinctively gravitated toward the safe experimenter, the person in the room they already knew and trusted.
So their entire demeanor just shifted into this defensive caution.
They didn't run away in a blind panic or anything, but they clearly registered a threat in the environment. The chemical alone was enough to trigger a defensive protocol.
That is wild.
But the researchers went a step further, and this is where it gets into really deep cognitive territory.
Okay.
They wanted to know, does smelling someone else's stress actually change the dog's internal worldview in that moment?
Their worldview, like how they see things.
Yes. So they introduced an ambiguous cognitive bias test.
Right, the ambiguous bowl test. I found this fascinating. How exactly does a bowl measure a dog's mood?
It measures optimism versus pessimism, which is a really great indicator of an animal's underlying emotional state.
Okay, walk me through it.
Imagine you teach a dog that a bowl placed on the far left side of the room always contains a delicious piece of sausage.
Got it. Left is good.
Then you teach them that a bowl on the far right side is always empty.
Right is bad.
They quickly learn this. They'll sprint to the left bowl and completely ignore the right one.
Sure.
Then you place a bowl right in the middle, an ambiguous location.
Ah, okay.
If a dog is feeling upbeat, confident, and optimistic, they will usually trot over to the middle bowl quickly, thinking, hey, maybe there's a sausage in this one too.
They're feeling lucky.
Exactly. But if the dog is feeling anxious, stressed, or pessimistic, they will hesitate. They'll walk slowly or avoid it entirely, just assuming it's empty.
They basically think, with my luck today, it's definitely empty.
Precisely. Now, apply the chemosignals to this test. When the dogs in the Vienna study smelled the neutral human sweat, they were overwhelmingly optimistic. They quickly approached the ambiguous bowl.
But the fear sweat.
The moment they were exposed to the fear sweat, the cortisol and adrenaline from the horror movie watchers, their behavior tanked. They became highly pessimistic.
Wow.
They hesitated. They took much longer to approach the bowl, or they just ignored it entirely.
So just to put this in human terms for you listening at home, just catching a whiff of the stress of a total stranger made these dogs assume the world was suddenly a worse place.
Yes.
It actively depressed their mood.
Their own internal emotional state physically and cognitively changed just from encountering the chemical debris of human fear.
Okay, let's bring this back to the chemical lie detector analogy we mentioned earlier.
Let's do it.
Imagine you have a house guest over, someone you barely know, maybe a distant relative or a new coworker.
Okay.
This stranger is sitting on your couch, smiling, being incredibly polite, drinking tea, saying all the socially acceptable things.
Doing the human polite routine.
Exactly. But internally, they're having an absolute meltdown. They are severely anxious, their internal monologue is racing, and their body is pumping out cortisol.
Right.
From our perspective, they look totally fine. But from the dog's perspective, are they basically screaming? Does the dog's mood drop just from sitting next to this politely smiling person?
Without a doubt. The dog's olfactory system completely overrides the human's polite social facade.
Completely overrides it.
Yes. To the dog, a smile is just a shape the mouth is making. But the cortisol pouring off their skin is biological truth. The dog is reacting to the reality of the room, not the etiquette.
That is deeply intimidating for anyone trying to hide a bad mood from their pet.
It's why you can't trick them. This is exactly why you will sometimes see a normally friendly dog act incredibly guarded, pacing, or even hiding from a guest who appears, to human eyes, to be perfectly pleasant.
And the owner is always like, I don't know why he's acting so weird. He usually loves people.
Exactly. The dog isn't acting weird. The dog is reading the chemical truth that the human guest is successfully hiding from you.
You can fake a smile, but you cannot fake your endocrine system.
Never.
So we've established they can literally smell our fear and our stress. But scent is just one pillar of the sensorium, isn't it?
It is. We also have to talk about their incredible auditory processing system.
Because before a dog even gets close enough to smell a distressed stranger, they usually hear them.
And their acoustic architecture is uniquely calibrated to the human vocal range.
Uniquely calibrated.
Yes. A dog isn't just registering the sheer volume of a sound the way a sudden thunderclap might startle them. They are meticulously analyzing the pitch, the frequency, and the tonal fluctuations of our voices.
They're really dissecting the audio.
They have an innate automatic ability to distinguish a genuine, jagged sob of despair from a neutral sound, like someone just humming while folding laundry.
And when you watch a dog process sound, it's like a full-body physical exertion. You see the head tilt, which always looks so adorable, but it's actually them mechanically adjusting their ear positioning, right?
Exactly, to triangulate the exact location and frequency of the sound. You see the ears flatten or swivel. They're acting like satellite dishes.
The head tilt is entirely functional. I always thought they were just being cute.
By shifting the angle of their ears, they are slightly altering the time it takes for the sound wave to hit each eardrum, which allows their brain to compute the exact origin point and gather deeper acoustic data.
Wow.
And when they gather data that indicates human distress, it triggers an immediate response.
There was a really revealing home-based experiment mentioned in our stack of sources for this deep dive that looked exactly at this acoustic trigger.
Oh, the living room study.
Yeah, the researchers didn't use sterile labs. They went straight into people's living rooms. They had strangers come into the home and either start genuinely crying or start loudly laughing in front of the dogs.
And the difference in the dogs' reactions was stark.
Completely. They showed significantly more person-oriented behaviors, which basically means nudging the stranger, whining at them, licking their hands toward the crying stranger compared to the laughing one.
The contrast there is vital. A laughing stranger is also making a loud, sudden, and unusual noise. If the dog were simply reacting to novelty or volume, they would investigate both people equally.
Right, because both are loud and weird.
But the pitch of crying carries a specific evolutionary weight. And the most illuminating part of that home-based study was the correlation they discovered regarding stress.
Right, the heart monitors.
Yes, the researchers measured the dog's physiological arousal, their heart rates, their physical signs of agitation. The dogs that became the most visibly stressed by the sound of the crying stranger were the exact same dogs that tried the hardest to interact with and comfort that stranger.
So the dog isn't acting out of a calm, collected desire to be a therapy animal. They are acting out of their own escalating anxiety.
Exactly. It's an internal automatic alarm bell ringing in their head. The crying makes the dog feel terrible, which forces the dog to try and do something to stop the noise.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at the evolutionary context. One of our sources points out a brilliant comparison between dogs and cats in this regard.
Oh, the interspecies differences are fascinating.
Right, because dogs are phenomenal at communicating distress back to humans. If you are sad and crying, your dog will often start whining along with you, literally mirroring your pitch.
They vocalize with us.
But cats, despite living with us for thousands of years, generally do not do this. They haven't evolved that specific shared acoustic language with humans to the same degree. Dogs have evolved to not only pick up on the urgency in our voices, but to broadcast it back to us.
It is a profound interspecies acoustic loop. Over 30,000 years, the dogs that survived were the ones who paid the closest attention to human emotional vocalizations.
Because it meant danger.
If a human was distressed, it usually meant a predator was near, or a lack of food, or an injury. The dog that ignored a crying human might not survive the night. The dog that alerted to it, internalized it, and responded to it remained part of the pack.
Okay, so we've mapped out the invisible data. They can smell the fear in the air via cortisol and adrenaline, and they can hear the sadness in the microfluctuations of our pitch and tone.
That's the foundation, yes.
But what happens when we move from the invisible to the visible? What happens when a dog actually looks directly at a distressed stranger's face?
Now we're getting into the really complex processing.
Because to understand this, we have to physically look inside the canine brain to see how all these signals, the scent, the sound, the sight, are being biologically crunched together.
And this is the frontier of canine neuroscience. It is truly breathtaking. Up until very recently, we could only guess at what a dog was thinking based on their outward behavior.
Just guessing from tail wags.
Right. But in 2025, neuroscientists made massive strides using functional MRI studies, fMRI, to map canine visual processing and facial recognition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to pause just on the logistics of this for a second.
The logistics are insane.
An fMRI machine measures blood oxygen levels in the brain to see which areas are actively working. But an fMRI machine is a giant claustrophobic tube that makes incredibly loud, terrifying clanging and banging noises.
90 decibels of magnetic clanging.
You can't just explain to a golden retriever that they need to hold completely still for 20 minutes for science.
No, you can't. The methodology of these studies is a triumph of animal training in itself. Neuroscientists spent months, sometimes over a year, using incremental positive reinforcement to train these dogs.
Just to sit in the machine.
Just to sit there. They taught them to voluntarily walk up a ramp into the scanner, place their chins on a specific custom-fitted rest, and lie with the stillness of a statue, completely unbothered by the noise.
And no sedatives.
Absolutely none. They did all of this completely awake, without any sedation, so the researchers could project images of human faces onto a screen inside the scanner and record the live brain activity.
It's unbelievable dedication just to ask the question, what do you see when you look at us?
And the answers were profound.
What did the scans actually reveal when the dogs looked at those human faces?
They found highly complex, specialized brain zoning. When the dogs looked at images of happy, smiling human faces, distinct and specific regions of their brain lit up with increased blood flow.
Which regions?
Most notably, the temporal cortex, which in mammals handles high-level processing of complex visual information, and the caudate nucleus.
The caudate nucleus. I know this one. That is the pleasure center, right? It's the same part of the human brain that lights up when we eat chocolate or win money or fall in love.
That is exactly right. It is a core component of the brain's reward system, heavily driven by dopamine. It anticipates positive outcomes and rewards.
So merely looking at a happy human face actively triggers a neurological reward in the dog's brain.
Yes, they genuinely experience biological pleasure from seeing us happy.
That is so sweet. But what about the negative faces?
Well, when the researchers switched the images to angry, frightened, or sad human faces, the caudate nucleus went dark.
The pleasure stopped.
Instantly.
Yeah.
And the brain activation pattern radically shifted to areas associated with threat assessment and vigilance. The canine brain was accurately and instantaneously predicting and categorizing the emotion it was seeing on the human face.
But the detail in the research that completely stopped me in my tracks was about the real estate in the brain itself. The scientists discovered that dogs have separate, anatomically distinct neural pathways for processing dog faces versus processing human faces.
That is the crucial finding.
I mean, let's really think about the implications of that. If I look at a human face or a chimpanzee face or a dog face, my brain uses roughly the same general visual processing area.
Right. Humans use a generalized system.
But a dog has carved out a bespoke piece of neurological real estate dedicated solely to decoding the facial expressions of a completely different species.
It's evolutionary magic.
This isn't just a general ability to see faces. This is a highly specialized, hardwired evolutionary adaptation specifically built for us.
It is a biological monument to our shared history. They are neurologically built to decode us. And because they have this dedicated hardware, they are incredibly sophisticated at using it. They don't just look at a sad face and take it at face value.
What they do?
They use their brains to compute what behavioral scientists call mismatched signals.
Mismatched signals. Like if my face is doing one thing, but my body language is doing another.
Exactly.
I know humans experience this as the uncanny valley, like when something looks almost human but slightly off, it creeps us out. Does a dog experience a version of that?
Absolutely. Dogs are master evaluators of a stranger's overall vibe because they are relentlessly looking for inconsistencies in the data.
Give me an example.
Let's say a stranger walks into your house. The stranger's face is crumpled up. Maybe they are whining or crying, broadcasting distress. But their body posture is rigid. Their shoulders are squared. Their weight is shifted forward, and they are staring intensely.
Like an aggressive posture.
Right. To a dog, a crying face means vulnerability, but a rigid, forward-leaning posture means aggression or defense. The canine brain instantly flags the mismatch.
The math isn't mathing for them.
Exactly. They compute that visual algorithm. The brain says the sound is sad, but the posture is a threat. And usually in the animal kingdom, when signals are mixed, the safest bet is to assume a threat.
So bringing this back to you, listening to this deep dive right now, if you have a friend over who is going through a terrible breakup and they are sitting on your rug crying, your dog isn't just staring at them with a blank, uncomprehending mind.
Not at all.
The dog's brain is running a massive high-speed algorithm. It is actively cross-referencing the spike in cortisol it smells, the acoustic frequency of the sobbing it hears, and the muscular tension in the human's face and body that it sees.
Taking in massive data streams.
It takes all of that, filters it through the temporal cortex and the amygdala, and makes a split-second life-or-death decision. Do I approach this crying person to comfort them? Do I bark at them to back away? Or do I go hide under the bed?
It is a deeply complex biological calculus happening in milliseconds.
Okay, this brings us to a massive turning point in our discussion today. We now know, without a shadow of a scientific doubt, that their brains are lighting up. They're gathering the chemo signals, they are processing the acoustic pitch, they are visually decoding our facial muscles. The machine is running.
The machine is definitely running.
But, and this is a huge but, does processing an emotion mean they actually feel empathy? Just because a computer can read a sad word doesn't mean the computer is sad. This brings us to a crucial dividing line in behavioral science. We need to distinguish between catching a feeling and actually understanding it.
This right here is the absolute epicenter of the canine empathy debate.
It's the big question.
Now that we understand the input, how they gather the emotional data, we are forced to define the output. What do they actually do with it internally?
Right. When your dog abandons its chew toy and runs across the room to lick the tears off a crying stranger's face, are they driven by a noble desire to rescue that person from emotional pain? Or are they just panicking because the human is panicking and licking is a self-soothing behavior?
Are they a tiny therapist or are they just freaking out?
Exactly. Are they a tiny therapist or just freaking out?
To answer that, we must define the fundamental neurological boundary between two very distinct concepts: emotional contagion and true cognitive empathy.
Let's start with emotional contagion.
This is a primitive, automatic, and largely involuntary mirroring of an emotional state. The classic human example is walking into a nursery where one baby starts crying, and within seconds, every other baby in the room is wailing.
Right, and the chain reaction.
The other babies don't know why the first one is sad. They don't possess the cognitive ability to pity the first baby. Their nervous systems simply catch the distress like a virus. It is a reflex.
So emotional contagion is just catching the vibe. You are infected by the mood of the room.
Correct. True cognitive empathy, on the other hand, requires a massive leap in neurological processing. It requires perspective taking.
What's
That means understanding why the other person is sad, recognizing that their sadness is separate from your own emotional state, and most importantly, having the deliberate, targeted goal to help them alleviate that specific suffering.
Contagion is catching the vibe. Cognitive empathy is understanding the plot.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
And to really look at how this plays out physically in our dogs, we have to look at the Harvard ECG study. Because this study proves just how physically deep the contagion goes. It's not just in their heads, it's in their hearts.
The Harvard study is a masterpiece of physiological monitoring. Researchers took owners and their dogs and hooked them both up to electrocardiogram monitors, ECGs, to track their heart function simultaneously in real time over various scenarios.
Both the human and the dog hooked up to machines.
Yes. What they discovered was a phenomenon of profound physiological matching. They specifically looked at heart rate variability, or HRV.
Let's break down HRV real quickly, because it's not just about how fast your heart beats, right? It's the time between the beats.
Yes. Heart rate variability measures the microscopic variations in the milliseconds between each individual heartbeat. It is a direct window into the autonomic nervous system.
Okay, so a high HRV means what?
A high HRV means your body is relaxed, adaptable, and in a rest and digest parasympathetic state. A low HRV means you are stressed, tense, and in a fight-or-flight sympathetic state. The Harvard researchers found that the dog's HRV literally mirrored their owner's HRV.
Wait, their actual heartbeats synchronized, like some sort of biological Bluetooth?
Essentially, yes. When the owner was placed in a relaxing environment and their heart rate variability showed deep calm, the dog's heart rate variability shifted to perfectly match that relaxed physiological state.
And when they were stressed?
When the owner was subjected to stress and their HRV plummeted, the dog's HRV plummeted alongside it. And other long-term studies have shown that this isn't just heart rates, it's hormonal.
Hormonal syncing, too.
Yes. If an owner goes through a prolonged period of stress, say a difficult month at work, the resting cortisol levels in their dog's hair follicles will actually rise to mirror the owner's chronic stress.
So what does this all mean? If their hearts and their hormones are just automatically mirroring ours, does that mean dogs only ever experience emotional contagion?
It's a tough question.
Are they just biological sponges soaking up our stress, vibrating with anxiety, but lacking any actual conscious desire to help us?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, and it leads us directly to one of the most famous behavioral tests in canine science, the rescue behavior experiments.
Heavy box test.
Yes. Researchers needed to know if this physiological stress, this soaring heart rate, actually translates into helpful empathetic action. So they designed the heavy box test. They placed a dog's owner inside a large, heavy wooden box equipped with a lightweight door.
Sounds a little dramatic.
It was very dramatic. The owner was instructed to pretend to be trapped, pounding on the door, crying out in intense, genuine-sounding distress.
And what did the dogs do? Did they just sit there and absorb the stress?
No, and this is where it gets incredible. About 50% of these completely untrained, everyday pet dogs spontaneously engaged in rescue behavior.
They actually tried to help.
They pushed at the heavy door, they dug frantically at the edges of the box, they whined, they problem-solved, until they managed to open the box and free their human.
Wow.
And when the researchers monitored these dogs, their heart rates and stress markers were soaring. They were highly aroused by emotional contagion. They caught the panic, but that contagion drove them to execute a specific targeted action, trying to solve the problem to free the source of their distress.
Okay, that sounds like a massive win for the cognitive empathy column. They saw a problem, they understood the human was trapped, and they fixed it.
It certainly looks that way.
But here is the massive twist that brings us right back to the core of our deep dive today. What happens when you change the human? What happens when you put a total stranger inside that exact same heavy box and have them cry out in the exact same distress?
The rescue behavior entirely collapses.
Just completely.
It plummets. When a stranger is the one trapped in the box crying, the dog's physiologic reaction still happens. Their heart rate still races. The emotional contagion is still active because they hear the distressing acoustic pitch and smell the stress sweat.
So they are still stressed.
Yes, but instead of taking action, they freeze.
They just short circuit.
They exhibit what we call a stress freeze. They might cautiously walk over and sniff the box. They might sniff the stranger's fingers through the air holes, but they do not attempt to problem solve.
They don't try to open the door.
They do not push the door. They make no effort to free the person.
They just stand there, fully stressed out, doing absolutely nothing.
Exactly. And this behavioral collapse leads neuroscientists to a vital, sobering conclusion. Dogs struggle profoundly to understand the goal of helping an upset stranger.
Because it's not their human.
Right. They're biologically hyper-aware that the stranger is in distress. Their noses and ears guarantee that, but they do not comprehend why the stranger is upset, nor do they feel driven by any form of cognitive empathy to fix the situation. The contagion does not translate into empathy.
So why is there such a massive, glaring gap in their behavior? Why will a dog push a heavy box until its paws hurt to save you, but just stare blankly at a stranger in the exact same box?
It's the missing variable.
If the acoustic signals are the same and the chemosignals are the same, what is the missing variable? And the answer, according to our sources, comes down to the literal chemistry of love.
It does.
The reason they freeze towards strangers introduces the missing biological key to this entire puzzle, a neurotransmitter and hormone called oxytocin.
Oxytocin is colloquially known as the love hormone, or the bonding chemical. In mammalian biology, it is the primary driver of deep social attachment.
It's what mothers and babies have.
It is the exact same hormone that floods a human mother's brain during childbirth and nursing to ensure she bonds with her infant. And over the last decade, science has discovered something truly magical about the human-dog relationship.
The eye contact, right?
Yes. When you and your dog lock eyes, just a simple shared gaze oxytocin levels rise significantly in both of your brains simultaneously.
It is a mutual interspecies chemical reward system. No other animal does that with us. I mean, if you stare into a wolf's eyes, oxytocin doesn't rise. Cortisol rises because it's a threat. But with dogs, it's love.
It's entirely unique. It creates a powerful, self-reinforcing neurological bonding loop. You look at your dog, your oxytocin rises, you feel a surge of affection, you reach out and pet the dog.
And the loop continues.
The physical touch causes the dog's oxytocin to spike further, making the dog feel deeply safe, secure, and attached to you. If we connect this to the bigger picture of the heavy box experiment, this oxytocin loop forms the absolute bedrock foundation of true rescue behavior.
Because the oxytocin makes them feel responsible for you. It's not just that they are panicking, it's that their brain chemistry is telling them, this is my bonded human, their survival is linked to my survival.
Yes. The chemical bond created by years of shared oxytocin loops elevates their response. It takes the sheer panic of emotional contagion and focuses it into a motivated, targeted desire to alleviate your suffering.
It's the bridge.
The oxytocin acts as a bridge, allowing the dog to cross over from mere contagious panic into something that looks and functions remarkably like cognitive empathy.
But strangers do not have that chemical VIP pass. A stranger hasn't built up a reservoir of oxytocin with your dog. And there was a fantastic, relatively simple piece of research from 2024 that illustrated this stranger effect perfectly.
The glass door study.
Yeah. Instead of a heavy box, they used a clear door. In this study, a stranger sat behind a glass door so the dog could see them. The researchers had the stranger do one of two things. Either sit there casually humming a neutral tune, or sit there slumped over, genuinely crying and showing intense emotional distress.
And if you believe that dogs possess a universal blanket empathy for all human suffering, the hypothesis would naturally be that the dogs would try to get through the door much faster, with much more urgency, to help the crying person.
Right. You'd expect them to be pawing at the glass, whining, trying to save them. But the reveal was that they simply didn't care.
They didn't.
The data showed that dogs did not open the door any faster or try any harder for the crying stranger than they did for the person who was just humming a tune. Because that historical oxytocin loop is completely absent with an unknown person, the empathy circuit in the dog's brain remains unpowered. It dims.
It dims because it is aggressively overridden by an older, much more powerful neurological system. Basic survival instinct.
The wolf brain.
Exactly. We have to remember the wolf inside the dog. When a dog encounters an unknown human who is acting highly emotional, erratic, and unpredictable, which is exactly what crying looks like to an animal, the dog's amygdala, the threat detection center, lights up.
It's assessing the threat.
The brain asks a fundamental binary question. Is this organism part of my pack? Because the answer is no, the dog's brain immediately prioritizes self-preservation. An unpredictable, emotionally volatile stranger is not a rescue mission. It is a potential threat.
Oh, wait, I have to challenge this because in that 2024 glass door study, some of the dogs did actually figure out how to open the door for the crying stranger. They didn't all freeze.
That is true.
Were those specific dogs just naturally more empathetic? Do some dogs just have a bigger heart for strangers?
That is the most fascinating detail of the study, and it completely dismantles the idea of universal canine empathy. The researchers looked incredibly closely at the subset of dogs that did open the door.
And what did they find?
They analyzed their behavioral profiles based on extensive personality assessments provided by their owners. And they found that the dogs who opened the door were not doing it out of some deep well of cognitive empathy for the stranger's sorrow. They were simply dogs with naturally highly confident, bold, and curious baseline personalities.
They weren't being empathetic, they were just being incredibly nosy. They heard a weird noise behind a door and wanted to see what was going on.
Essentially, yes. They were boldly investigating a novel acoustic anomaly in their environment. Their high confidence meant their threat detection system wasn't easily triggered, so they felt safe enough to explore.
And the other dogs?
Conversely, the dogs with naturally anxious, timid, or submissive personalities simply shut down, froze, or avoided the door entirely. Neither group, the bold dogs or the anxious dogs, was displaying true cognitive empathy toward the stranger's emotional state. They were both simply relying on their default personality traits to manage a stressful, unpredictable environmental stimulus.
This is such a paradigm shift. So empathy towards strangers is clearly not an automatic, out-of-the-box factory setting in our dogs. True, ashmal empathy is highly dependent on a cocktail of familiarity, built-up oxytocin, and a total lack of perceived threat.
Exact.
Which transitions us perfectly from the realm of fMRI scans and behavioral theory into your actual living room. Armed with this profound neurobiological knowledge about chemosignals, visual algorithms, and the stranger effect, how can you actually change your daily life with your dog?
Because gathering knowledge is only the first step.
Yeah.
It is most valuable when it is practically applied to improve the lives of the animals in our care.
Right, theory into practice.
If we now understand that a dog's biology naturally views a distressed, crying stranger with deep caution and potential fear, rather than immediate, Lassie-like empathy, it fundamentally changes our responsibility as owners. We have to stop expecting them to be magical empaths and start managing their biological reality.
We have to step up.
We have to become the bridge of safety. We must provide the structural predictability that their nervous systems are desperately looking for in those moments.
And the source material provides a fantastic, actionable, step-by-step method for handling this, which they call the Safe Base Protocol.
The Safe Base Protocol is excellent.
Because remember, in the absence of a familiar pack structure, their threat response activates. But to your dog, you are the source of the oxytocin. You are the ultimate safe base.
Exactly. So let's walk through how to apply this in a real-world scenario. Imagine a highly emotional situation. A visitor arrives at your home in a state of distress. Perhaps it's a friend who just received devastating news, or a family member who is crying.
Very common scenario.
Your dog immediately smells the massive spike in cortisol and adrenaline. They hear the ragged pitch of the human's breathing. Their threat detection system is firing. The absolute first rule, the golden rule, based on everything we've discussed today, is do not force greetings.
Do not drag your dog by the collar over to the crying person and say, go say hi, go give them a kiss.
Never. That is the worst possible thing you could do, because you are forcing a dog with an activated threat system into the personal space of an unpredictable variable.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It is. The steps for the Safe Base Protocol are incredibly simple, but they require discipline from the human. First, the moment the distressed visitor arrives, calmly direct your dog to a designated safe spot, a mat, a dog bed in the corner, or an open crate.
Give them a place to go.
Give them a high-value, long-lasting chew toy. This gives their brain a task and a dopamine reward that competes with the stress signals in the room. Second, and this is the hard part, you explicitly instruct your distressed visitor to completely ignore the dog.
No eye contact, no reaching out a hand for them to sniff, no talking to them in a baby voice. Total invisibility.
You are systematically removing all social pressure from the animal. You are telling the dog, you do not have to compute this person's mixed signals. You do not have to solve the problem of their cortisol. I am handling it.
I have to say, I feel a massive sense of relief just reading this protocol. As a dog owner, society puts this immense, unfair pressure on us to have a perfect dog.
Oh, the pressure is huge.
We expect our pets to be these flawless therapy animals that will magically comfort any guest who walks through the door, regardless of the energy that guest is bringing. But learning the stark biology behind this takes all that pressure off. A neutral dog, a dog that simply stays on its mat, chews a bone, and completely ignores a crying stranger, is not a bad dog.
Not at all.
That dog is actually a massive success story. It is infinitely safer and less stressful for everyone involved than an anxious dog rushing the stranger because they are overwhelmed by emotional contagion.
It requires a profound shift in human perspective.
Mhm.
We have to learn to celebrate neutrality. Neutrality is the biological goal when dealing with strangers.
Neutrality's good.
But, of course, we live in the real world, and we also have to talk about what happens when things do not go perfectly. What happens if you are too slow? The dog approaches the crying stranger, becomes completely overwhelmed by the barrage of comical and visual signals, and suddenly growls.
Right, because a growl in that situation is terrifying. You have a guest who is already upset, and suddenly your dog is rumbling at them. The human instinct is to immediately yell, "No, bad dog,"
Yeah.
and punish them.
It is a terrifying sound, but we must override our human embarrassment and understand the neurobiology of why it happens. The dog is not being mean.
They're scared.
The dog is growling because their amygdala is redlining. They are experiencing defensive behavior due to the sheer unpredictability of the crying person's sounds and posture. The dog feels physically threatened by the chaotic data it is receiving, and the absolute most important warning any behavioral scientist will give you is this: never, under any circumstances, punish the growl.
Because if you punish the growl, you are just aggressively punishing their warning system. You are punishing their ability to communicate fear.
Exactly. A growl is a vital, healthy communication tool. It is your dog desperately saying, "I am totally overwhelmed by these chemical signals. I do not understand this human's posture, and I need space immediately."
And if you take that away...
If you punish the growl, the dog's brain learns a terrifying lesson. Warning my human is dangerous and results in conflict. So the next time they are overwhelmed by a stranger's cortisol, they might skip the warning growl entirely and go straight to a defensive bite to protect themselves.
That is terrifying.
Instead of punishing, you must calmly step in, physically block the space between the dog and the stranger, remove the dog from the situation, and become their safe base again.
Okay, so the safe-based protocol is brilliant for managing the immediate acute situation when a guest is already in the house. But what if you want to be proactive? What if you want to actively change how your dog's brain processes these invisible stress signals in the long term?
We can do that too.
I absolutely marveled at this next part of the source material. It takes the University of Vienna chemosignal research and turns it into a practical application. We can literally train our dogs for smell. We can do targeted scent desensitization training.
This is where we stop just managing behavior and start actively using biology to rewire the brain's pathways. Scent desensitization is incredibly effective because it targets the very first input the dog receives. Because we know dogs react defensively to the chemical markers of human fear, we can gradually introduce those exact markers in a highly positive, controlled context.
The steps for this are brilliantly weird, and I love it. The source suggests you actually recreate the Vienna study at home. You ask a willing friend to sit down, watch a genuinely terrifying, scary movie, and keep a sterile gauze pad tucked under their armpit to collect their sweat.
Yes, you need the genuine, authentic biological markers. You need the cortisol and the adrenaline baked into that pad.
So you take this fear-soaked gauze pad, you put it in a Ziploc bag, and you bring it back to your house. And the key here is distance and agency. You do not walk up to your dog and shove the fear sweat in their face.
No, absolutely not.
You place the pad on the floor all the way across the room, maybe even in an adjoining hallway.
Correct. You must allow the dog to control the distance. You let them use their incredible olfactory system to detect the anomaly in the room, and you wait for them to approach it voluntarily. And the very millisecond they step forward to investigate that scent pad, you immediately pair the appearance of that chemical smell with an incredibly high-value reward.
Like cheese.
We are talking premium currency, roasted chicken, sharp cheese, hot dogs, whatever your specific dog loves most in the world.
And what is the underlying neurological goal here? When they smell the sweat and eat the cheese, what is actually physically changing in their brain?
We are engaging in classical counterconditioning. We are literally rewiring the synaptic pathways in the fear circuit. Previously, the scent of human stress to cortisol acted as a trigger of an unpredictable, potentially threatening environment. It triggered the amygdala.
But now...
By introducing the scent at a very low intensity from across the room and immediately pairing it with a massive dopamine spike from the high-value food reward, the dog's brain begins to form a brand new neurological association.
Yeah.
Over multiple sessions, the stressed human smell stops predicting chaos and starts predicting that a piece of chicken is about to fall from the sky. The chemical signature transitions from a threat warning to a dinner bell.
It is literal biological hacking.
Oh,
It is
goodness.
so brilliant because it takes all the mystical, confusing mystery out of dog behavior and gives you, the owner, a concrete scientific way to help a nervous dog navigate a human world that is full of highly emotional, stressed out, strange people.
It's empowering.
And honestly, it really wraps up the entire mission of our deep dive today. Understanding our dog's biological reality, knowing that they aren't just magical, limitless empathy sponges, but incredibly complex biological organisms constantly reading invisible chemical and visual data, makes us infinitely better owners. It shifts us from expecting them to be perfect to helping them feel safe.
It fosters a much deeper, more profound respect for them. When you realize the sheer amount of computational neurological work they're doing every single second just to coexist peacefully in our chaotic human environments, you stop taking their presence for granted.
Which brings us to the end of our incredibly deep dive today, and I want to leave you, listening right now, with a final thought to really mull over as you watch your dog sleeping at your feet tonight. Because there was one specific lingering detail from the 2025 University of Vienna chemosignal study that we didn't fully expand on, but it is deeply provocative and opens up a whole new world of questions.
Yes, it is a point that researchers are still grappling with. The scientists in Vienna noted a phenomenon they called strong inter-individual variation. In simple terms, this means that the dogs in the study did not all react the exact same way to the human fear sweat.
Some were more scared than others.
Exactly. Some dogs were so paralyzed by the chemosignals that they needed constant reassuring commands from their owners just to inch toward the smell. Meanwhile, other dogs didn't seem particularly bothered by the cortisol at all and walked right up to the pad with mild curiosity. Right, it wasn't a monolith. And this variation raises an incredibly important, almost haunting question for you to observe and think about in your own dog. If a dog's biological reaction to human fear chemicals varies so wildly based on their individual past experiences, could a dog's early life trauma physically and permanently rewire their biological empathy circuits?
It's a huge question. Think about a rescue dog that had a highly traumatic past, perhaps living with a chronically stressed, angry, or unpredictable human. Did that prolonged exposure to toxic levels of human cortisol permanently alter the physical structure of how their temporal cortex processes a crying face? Are they biologically locked into assuming human emotion is a threat?
It is a profoundly sobering thought that our stress could leave a permanent architectural scar on their brains. But the flip side of that exact question is where all the hope in behavioral science lies.
The plasticity of the brain?
Yes. If chronic trauma and fear can rewire their neural pathways to fear our stress, then can our love, our intentional oxytocin loops, our endless patience, and our consistent use of the safe-based protocols slowly, meticulously rewire them back? Can we use the neurobiology of safety to teach a traumatized canine brain that a crying human is no longer a threat, but just a human who needs space?
Can we heal the hardware with love? That is something truly fascinating and deeply hopeful for you to explore and observe in your own home with your own dog as you continue to build that bond. Thank you for listening, dear Brigadiers, and if you have any questions, visit the source article on Doggozila Magazine at doggozila.com. That was all for this episode, and until the next time, bye to all listeners of the Bark Brigade podcast.